My name is Driany Cruz. This is my story at the Mindset Mastery Moments, where we encourage and invite female immigrant Americans to tell their stories and share their journeys. Welcome back to another episode of Chatting with Slava the Jordanian. I'm your host, STJ, and I'm here today, very excited to have Driany on. Thank you so much for coming on. So I guess let's talk about the journey. Let's talk about your parents' journey coming from the Dominican Republic and you being the first generation American. Of course, now you are also a mom, so your children is second generation American. And what is the story behind them coming to, I guess, New York, right? And how old were they?
So they actually came 1988, around that time. My mother came, so her dad was already here. Her dad had married someone who lived here, and that's how she came. So they were around the age of 18, both of them. They weren't really fond of the idea of coming to the United States. They were brought here by their parents because their parents saw that they had a better opportunity living here. So they were not very happy to come to the United States because they were just so used to their lifestyle. And being at the age of 18, we think that we're grown up, we're adults, we can make our own decisions. They weren't really happy that someone had brought them here. And, you know, it's just a different lifestyle in general. They were just so used to being in the Dominican Republic. My dad was brought here by his mom. And they actually both came to the city, so New York City. And they had been here for a couple of years. I think that they met, you know, maybe in the 90s, and they met through mutual friends. And they had my brother and I, 1991, 1992. My brother's a year younger than me. And yeah, they were just trying to figure it out. They were, you know, coming to the United States, trying to figure out how to make a living, you know, having full-time jobs, having kids really young, and just trying to figure out the lifestyle.
So what was the circumstances of your grandparents like for them to pull your mom and your dad from the DR at age 18? Like you said, the age 18 is a very critical age. You know, we set in our way, we made our friends, it's a certain lifestyle. And at age 18 or 19, you don't think about trying to make a better life. You just think about, I just want to keep the life that I have. But are there certain circumstances to pull somebody? I mean, like I said, having teenagers, they just started to implant their roots, you know, their connections and the social life and the friends and family.
Yeah, I think that they were just trying to bring their kids. They have multiple siblings. I think they were just trying to have them here so that they can explore the world and have better opportunities, because they were starting to see some progression in comparison to living in the Dominican Republic. So they just thought that they were going to come here and thrive. And so I think that that was the intention. And certainly, I mean, they've come a long way. I mean, when you're young and you're trying to figure it out and you're kind of thrown into the world of like, here, you know, this is what you're going to get. This is how we're going to set you up. So we're going to give you a place to stay. We're going to put you out in the work field and, you know, the workforce, and whatever that looks like to you, whether it's working for a company or working for a store or working, you know, they were just trying to figure out, they weren't really sure. And they lived in New York City, and that lifestyle, I mean, it wasn't so expensive back then, from my understanding, but it wasn't affordable. You know, they were very low income. They could barely afford to have my brother and I, let alone live in an apartment. They've learned a lot. And with them living in New York City, they realized that it wasn't something that was sustainable. So they actually moved to where I live now, which is in Lawrence, Massachusetts, which was a little bit more affordable. And that point I really do remember because I was at the age of 4 or 5. So there's like certain memories that I do have of living there. Now that I'm older, I understand some of the decisions that they made and I can speak on them. But it was still something where we were still super low income in a low income community. And they worked factory jobs, both of them. And my dad has his own business now. My mother works, she's a supervisor, a manager in a company. She's been there long term. So they've learned a lot, made a lot of mistakes, and they're doing amazing now. I'm so proud of them because they've come a long way from where they started, coming from Dominican Republic, being 18 years old, not knowing what you want to do, not knowing that you want to be here for real. You come here and you're like, why did you pull me out from my roots? Why did you take what I was so used to and bring me here to kind of disrupt their life? And to them, it might have felt like they were off track. So that was quite interesting to just hear how they got here and how much they've grown since then, and just see that firsthand. So yeah.
It's a very common it's very common emotions and very common experiences with all immigrants, because regardless where you come from, I realize that, like I said, you leave everything that you know and everybody that you love behind, but you have that kind of voice inside of you. There's must be a better life out there. There must be a better life out there, and I want that life for my children. They must have seen something in the DR that, disrupted their mindset to the point that I got to pull my kids out. I need, a better life for them, or I want a better life for them. And yeah, every immigrant story, there's a struggle. We got to do what we needed to do, because the immigrant mindset is always like, I can't fail right now because I sacrificed so much. I can't quit right now because there's so much to do. I need to set up an example for others to follow my footsteps, whether family members or friends or other Dominican or other immigrants. We're constantly carrying that guilt trip, heavy on our shoulders, that you feel guilty giving up, you feel guilty not succeeding, because all you think about, honestly, is just to make your country proud of you, your family proud of you, that, you don't want to be in a situation where they look at you and say that this is it. You sacrifice everything for this. That's not good enough. So you need to constantly do more and do better and have higher aspirations and climb out that mountain, and you'll do anything that you need to do in order to get there, because there is an option always to go back, but our guilt, the feeling of guilt, the feeling that abandonment, we abandoned everything, we better make them proud with our achievements. Now, why New York? Did they have family or friends in New York? Because it seems like that's always the first destination. I went to dental school in New York City. So going from such a exotic country like Dominican and, tropical country, Dominican, going to New York City, there must have been like a culture shock. When I went going to graduate school in the city, that was not an easy task every single day. So did they have family? Did they have friends in New York?
Yeah, so they had family in New York. They had family in Boston as well. But I think that's the misconception of, people that live in Dominican Republic. And I don't know if maybe this is why their parents ended up living here. But when you go to Dominican Republic, and even when I visited Dominican Republic, it was sort of like, oh, you're from New York. They don't associate the United States, or they don't know what Massachusetts is. They don't know what, they don't know little cities. They don't know, and they just know New York at like just big general state, right? They think it's like this big thing. So I think that that's probably the reason why their parents came here. That it's all they knew. You know, they didn't realize that there's so much more out there, and there's so many different places that they can go to. I know that they probably had family in Maryland and you know, some other places, but primarily it was just the thought of New York City, and that's all they knew.
It seems like it's a destination for, you know, the first destination for anybody that comes over, because you can't go wrong as far as that opportunity. There's always work to be done. So you are going to find some kind of a job just to start you off. That's number one. Number two, I think watching movies and watching TV shows, it's all about New York, New York. And I can tell you that coming to the United States, we were so in an awe about the 1950s. We think United States is all about the golden era of the 1950s, and we navigate our understanding of the United States by using a lot of these movies that we watch, the glamour, the struggle in New York City, the hustling and bustling of the crowd, and you wanna be part of that crowd, which is very, very interesting. But like I said, there must have been some kind of circumstances that your grandparents made that's a big move. And that's a lot of pressure on your parents for adaptability, you know, to be simulated in a new culture like that. We call it acculturation too, in the new society. Now, Dominican Republic is not that far from North America, but the culture it's so different, you know, music, food, weather, language, and in the way you conduct yourself, what we call the traditional tribal connection, that tribe connection. You have all the family, you have a lot of support when you're home in your home world. When you come to the new world, like you said, you look for a glimpse of that tribal connection as in New York or Massachusetts, hoping to have that support until you really stand on your feet. The way I describe it is being a toddler. You're just learning how to walk again, you know, and you need that support to help you, you know, stand up and walk and move forward and get things done. So you were born in New York, but now you live in Massachusetts, right? And how is it growing up in New York?
I wish I can remember. I know of stories. I was so young. I was 3-4 years old when I came here. And, you know, it's quite interesting. I mean, I've gone to New York after that because I loved the idea of being in a city. And very quickly, you know, as a teenager, I thought that it was cool. You know, I really liked the thought of it. I like the thought of just being there, taking the subway and going shopping. And, you know, there's never a dull moment. There's never a moment where the city is sleeping. It's like the city's always awake. But when I came here to Lawrence, I remember kindergarten. And my brother was in first grade. Yeah, I remember preschool actually, just going a little bit farther back. I remember preschool, and it was definitely a change. It really was something for me that was just kind of normal. And my parents, they probably thought it was better for them because they started to see themselves doing a little bit more, being able to afford more, because in Massachusetts, they probably had better opportunity, probably were able to give more, and they probably could get better jobs. In the city, it's not, you can get a job, but it's not like, I guess in comparison, it's not as good as if you were going somewhere else.
No, I agree with you. New York City is there's a lot of temptations, you know, to stay up all night, to spend more money, to walk around the city. I remember when I was in dental school, when I couldn't sleep, I'll just get up and start walking from the East River all the way up into Chinatown, and, you know, 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, it never sleeps. So it has that, you know, vibe, you know, about it. And it could be now 1988. That's when I came to this country, right? In 1988, the whole country was so different. Things were a lot more affordable. I mean, even since from the 2005, 2006, when I moved to Nashua, New Hampshire, things were a lot more affordable. I think everything is becoming more and more expensive everywhere. So I can't imagine trying to have ends meet being in New York City, and being in New York City is not cheap. It's very expensive. Forget about trying to raise a family, and it could be, somebody or their friends told them like, oh, come to Lawrence. It's a lot cheaper. The kids can have a lot of the opportunities, but I can sense even in your voice that the fact that when you just migrated from New York to Lawrence, Mass. And by the way, New York and Massachusetts, they're so different.
Right.
Me living in New England all this time, but going to school in New York City, it took me a while to adjust to the culture, the New England culture. So I can't even imagine, but you as a 3-year-old migrating, not even immigrating, just migrating from the big city to Lawrence, probably felt like it's a suburb too. So that's an adjustment by itself, I'm sure.
Yeah, no, it definitely was an adjustment, and just trying to figure out how to live in this different city where it's like things are a lot more quiet. It's a little bit slower pace. It's not like you can there's not many job opportunities in comparison to New York City, I would imagine. So, how I said, I mean, I was so young that it didn't really make super much of a difference to me, but to them, I'm sure it did. And I saw that growing up, because going from just hearing their story about when we were younger, living in New York City, struggling, where they couldn't even afford to buy groceries. They couldn't even afford to be in an apartment, just them two, and raising my brother and I. And when they came to Lawrence, I saw, okay, we have food in the fridge, and my parents work hard. They worked for factories, and they can buy us stuff. And it just seemed a little bit easier for them just being here, because the lifestyle was so much cheaper.
One of the most common characteristics of an immigrant is the unlimited mindset by eliminating limited beliefs. So you cannot allow, if you're going to survive and thrive in your journey, you cannot allow the limited mindset to really control your dreams or your path or your potential, or the hard work that you are allowing to yourself to invest so much to have a better life. But it sounds like your parents had such a humble beginning. Now they're thriving and all is well, which is very, very inspiring and very impactful stories. One of so many stories of the immigrants. But your parents, think about it, they got displaced twice. They got displaced and ripped out of their roots in the DR, but also they had to make that same decision like your grandparents did, to migrate you guys from New York to Lawrence to have a better life. So that was not, it might have been good enough New York City when they were teenagers, and then when they met and then they got married and now they're a couple, they have a family responsibilities. They had to make that decision to shift you guys and displace you again to Lawrence, Mass. So where's the education, the importance or the emphasis of education landed, or did it have a place in your guys' journey that your parents, where they were looking for a better place where you guys can get education? Or was it that, don't worry about school, just get a job kind of thing?
Oh no, my parents were big on the idea of school. So it's funny, because to them that was the American dream. So they probably thought, and maybe this was their way of thinking when they first got here, and their parents, like, you're going to go to the United States, you're going to get an education, you're going to get a good job. So there is this mindset of going to school and becoming something big. So they always had hoped that for my brother and I. And I don't think they've really understood that, in certain locations, this is the best school for that. But they knew that they wanted my brother and I to do a lot better than them, because my dad, he didn't graduate high school. They didn't make it. Didn't make it through high school. So to them, it was like, we're working hard. We don't want our kids to make the same mistake. So they drilled it in our minds, like my brother and I, like, go to school, make sure you do good in school. They did not like the idea of a technical school, even when we were older, because it's just ignorance, right? To them, it's like, no, you have to become a doctor. You have to be a lawyer, because that's just the mindset. That's where people think that you make the most money. So that was a big deal growing up for us. And I remember when I graduated high school and I went to college, I didn't really have a direction. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but my parents were so proud of me, because they said, oh, my brother and I graduated high school. Now we're starting a real life. We're starting adult life. We got past what they were past, and we didn't have jobs like them. So we weren't working hard like them, but they were like, okay, we did something for our kids. We did something more than what our parents did for us. And there were high hopes of me getting through college and doing something major. And when I came to my mom and said after year 2, I'm like, Mom, I don't want to go to college anymore. I want to pursue this dream in dentistry. And she's like, what? No, you can't just stop going to college and go and get a certificate. Because I thought, I should probably do something where I can start making money right away. And she did not like that idea. She's like, no, you have to do something bigger. Like their way of thinking is like, no, there's something bigger. And I think that's why they've developed so many good characteristics of being here and from where they came from and doing so many things. How I said, I'm really, really proud of them, because from where they came from to where they are today, it is it's like a 180. And they drilled that in us. They're like, you guys have to do better. There is not a choice. You just have to. So it was interesting. They knew they wanted us to go to college.
Now, education for an immigrant, I'll tell you this, my dad used to tell me that, and especially being like a Palestinian descent, it's even more, because it's your armor, it's your protection. And I mentioned in every single episode, my dad used to say, government can come and take your house. A politician can change your laws on you. A husband can, just mistreat you. Even your children might break your heart, and they might not be able to take care of you the way you want them to. So all they have is your knowledge and education. He goes, I don't care if we're starving. I don't care if we can't put food on the table, but I can give you an education, and I'll make sure that you're finishing education. So it is an immigrant mindset that we discuss on this podcast. And the fascinating thing is, it doesn't matter where you come from. An immigrant is an immigrant, whether you displaced yourself by default, meaning that they were so many social circumstances, financial, economical circumstances that it had pushed you out, or displaced yourself by design, meaning that, you didn't have the suppression, oppression, or political circumstances, or war zone, or famine, or natural disaster that you had to displace yourself, but you thought you want to elevate your life by seeking higher education. But it is, like I said, it's fascinating how the immigrant mindset is exactly the same. Education is the number one. It's your ticket and your invitation to the party. That's what my dad used to say. When you are educated, whether trade school, whether an associateship, whether undergrad, just a bachelor or a graduate school degree, it doesn't really matter. It almost like you stick out, and the society will accept you a lot easier. And that's your parents, and that's our parents' concern. How is the society is going to accept my child without education? Because then you'll have the mindset, you'll have the opinions that society is interested in. They want to hear you out. They want to incorporate your potential and your expertise in the society. And that's what the immigrants constantly fixated on. Get a education. I don't care what it is, get an education, because according to your story, your parents not only sacrificed, they were displaced by your grandparents, but also your dad didn't get to finish high school, right? Because he got pulled out and he got displaced by his parents. And of course, when you immigrate to a new world, you got to help the family, because that's all you got. You don't have an extended family to say, okay, my son can't help me. I'm going to call my cousin, or I'm going to call my uncle, or I'm going to call my, my best friend from high school to help me. All you got is the parents and the offsprings, the parents and the offsprings. And that's a very small, tribe to really, survive and thrive, independently of that huge tribal connection that you left behind. So I'm glad they did that. But, every immigrant parent wants a better life for their children. So you ended up going to college. You didn't finish? Is that what you're saying?
I did eventually. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So you got your bachelor's?
I have my associates
in
business administration.
Oh, nice. And how about your brother?
My brother did not finish college. He is,
How did that go?
He's doing really good. He's a DJ. I mean, that's just what he loves. He loves music. He loves just,
Awesome.
just being out there, and he's really good at it. So that's his life. And he's still kind of trying to figure things out too. But I'm sure he doesn't want to go back to college or do anything like that.
And how did your parents react to that?
Oh, they no, not really happy about it. So my brother and I are really different, and we have we grew up obviously with the same rules, the same expectations, and we went in different directions. The reason why I went back to college was because I always have this mentality of like, when I start something, I want to finish it. Or so to me, I wanted to make my parents proud. I wanted to be the first one to graduate from my family, from college. So I'm the first to have, my degree in my immediate family. And so I did it more for them. And they were actually really upset with me because I graduated and I wanted to do more. I wanted to go for my bachelor's, and I didn't go to my graduation. And they're like, Driany, this is a big deal. Like, you should have told us that you were, you had finished. You've got a degree. And, but they didn't understand the path that I took and why I took it. They know that all of the decisions that I made were, I made mistakes, but everything that I did where I am today is a lot better than where they were at my age, if that makes sense.
No, it is an achievement because remember, as parent, and I never birthed any children, but I talk to parents, all the time, and especially immigrant parents, your achievement is their achievement. They are so proud what you have of what you have achieved. It's because of their hard, work and the sleepless nights of trying to plan and figure out how to keep you guys on track in order for you guys not to lose your path. And that's a scary thing. I mean, parents have a lot of pressure on them with that. But I want to go back to dentistry. How did you end up in dentistry?
So dentistry is something that kind of just fell on my lap. I had a friend actually that I've been working since I was 13, just little jobs, making a little bit of money here and there. But when I graduated high school, I was working full time for the sneaker store, and I was working two jobs. I was working at the sneaker store and I was working at Marshall's. And I had a friend who was going to hygiene school. So every once in a while, I'll see her work for the summers. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like, what are you going to school for? She's like, oh, I'm going to school for dental hygiene. And I said, oh, that's interesting. I'm like, oh, that might be something that I would want to do. And this was in the midst of me trying to figure out what I wanted to do in college. So I was going to school, liberal arts. I had no direction. So I was trying to go to criminal justice. I was trying to do psychology. And so I was like, you know what? I need to stop wasting money, because essentially when you're going to college, you're wasting money if you've already got all the prerequisites in. And I've got to get into something. So I wanted to do something really quick. And then I came across this new school. They had just opened up the dental assistant program. And when I just went in and I was like, oh, I don't really know what I want to do, but I know that you guys had just opened up this program. I'm interested to hear more about dentistry, because I knew my friend was doing hygiene. So I thought it was just like, oh, it's just the first step of getting into dentistry. And it was great. She's like, oh, this is a really great opportunity. Like there are statistics that are proving that being an assistant, it's going to skyrocket within the next 5 years. So this is a great choice. So I went into it blindly. I'm like, you know what? My friend's doing it. It doesn't sound like a bad idea. It's going to skyrocket in a couple of years. Let me try it out. And it's funny because when I was in the dental assistant program, there was a point where I wanted to stop. Now with this mindset of like, I started something, I got to finish it. I eventually was like, I came to my senses. I'm like, I've got to finish this through. And I finished the program. I've got my first situation that came my way. It was working for a corporation. And I was like, I'm just gonna stick here. So I was making almost like basically minimum wage at that point. And within 4 years of dentistry, I went from assisting to the administrative side. And then I didn't realize that there was so much more to it in dentistry. And so from there, it just kind of blew up. I did so much more than just dental assisting. I mean, I do dental assistant here and there, but there's so much more to it that I didn't know about.
Yeah. So it sounds it sounds like things happen for a reason, right? Because then we're both in a dental field and we share a lot of stories about your basically evolution going from a chairside assistant to now you're doing a lot of work with dental offices, right? You train but let's share with the audience is, what is it that you're doing on the side? It's almost like coaching, right? For dental offices.
So I work for this company that has coaches. We actually work with clients all over the United States. And I basically my position is more of setting them up, presenting what's to expect with being a part of the becoming a client. I've thought about coaching myself just because I've done a lot of administrative work and management. But right now is just solely, I just focus on just working with the clients directly and getting them in the right path for them to be successful in what they sell in that company.
That's really amazing. I mean, just listening to your story from the beginning until now, it sounds like you're following your parents' footsteps, just really simple, humble beginnings, and you building on that. And I love the mindset. I mean, it sounds like I'm not trying to, like judge your person, but you're very extroverted, you're very people oriented. And I think with your character, that position is perfect for you. You're gonna, help a lot of people get to their goal and get to do what they really wanted to do. Now you are a mom, right? How is the belief system changing as your position in life has changed? Seeing your parents struggle, seeing how your parents emphasize education. Can you share with us, like, what do you think you're going to take from your parents' value or belief system, and what is it that you're going to make on your own as a new belief system in order to teach your kids, as a second generation American?
So definitely their work ethic, because it's stellar. I mean, how I said, from where they worked very hard. So that's what I did. I worked hard, and it wasn't like working hard and, getting your hands dirty or anything like that. Like, that's where they came from. It was more of like, hey, here's the next step. So I want to be able to offer that to my kids. Here's the other step that you can take where you're not really, I mean, it's sort of, it's kind of like one of those situations of like, should I kind of give them a little bit of a taste of where I came from and what my parents dealt with so that they can understand it a little bit better and appreciate it more. But for me, it's like, at least I had a little bit more help than what they did, and I was able to do so much. I want to be able to give that to my kids. At the very minimum, just give them the opportunity of, like, for example, I own a home. I want to make sure that when my kids are older, when they're at the age of 18, they've already started thinking, like, you have to start thinking that you should not just buy a home, but like start establishing your life, right? But don't overwhelm yourself either, because you're still young, you still have to live your life. So there has to be a balance. So that's part of the stuff that I needed to learn on my own, because there was no balance with my parents. For me, there was sort of a little bit of a balance. And for my kids, I want to be able to offer them something where they're like, okay, we've got some balance and we're still trying to figure it out.
So we talked about the work ethics. That's what we call, as we use in dentistry, transfer of power. So they transfer that power to you, work really hard, have quality life, plan for the future, don't chase the money. Chasing the money is very short-lived. I'll tell you that. I've been on this earth half a century, and I'll tell you that chasing the money, it's something that it can give you an instant gratification, but that's not what you want to have when you get to my age, on the other side, I call it, of the journey, because I rather be rich in assets than rich in cash, because I can always recycle that asset to make me more cash. I'm looking for legacy. I'm looking for branding. I'm looking for culture and experience. And I think kudos to you, because I think it's a very, very valuable characteristic and trait that your parents transfer that to you, and you're going to transfer that to your kids. Is your household, is it like a very, Dominican? Do you try to keep that custom going on, that tradition going on, or are you going to let your kids kind of make their own tradition, their own custom?
So my household right now is very Americanized. We all speak English. It's our first language in the house. And, for my parents, even for them, they're trying to get better. So my dad speaks better English than my mother. And when I was growing up, they would do this thing where my brother and we would talk to them in English. And they understood us, but they were more of like, they would say in Spanish, like, we don't understand you. You need to talk to us in Spanish. And so it made us learn Spanish. I'm so grateful for that. And, I kind of wish they would do that with my kids. I mean, they're still pretty young, so it's kind of hard to see them. But that's one thing. I want my kids to still have that culture in their background. I still want them to experience that because it's important. They need to know where they come from. So my partner is Puerto Rican, and his mother she only speaks Spanish. So I'm so grateful for that, because I know that the girls are going to be primarily speaking Spanish when they're with her. And so I want them to learn both of their cultures. I want them to learn, where his mother came from and where my parents came from, and, what's the difference between both and how they're similar and how we've combined our cultures and because it's sort of the same, but it's sort of different. There's a lot of things that they might do that we do differently. But I think with us being super Americanized in our household, it's a little bit harder. Being Spanish food, right? So
Oh yeah, for sure. No, being bilingual is very, very beneficial, and also having children get the multicultural competency and multicultural adaptability, we call it. Back in the day, in my age and my time, coming to the United States, you're either American or an Arab. We had to choose, and there was a lot of social pressure on us to actually drop one and pick the other. But now these days, they encourage children, second, third, fourth generation Americans, to really pick up as much multicultural skills as possible, because the world is becoming very small, with social media, and we're all connected. It's really a small world, and more of the young generations are interested in, traveling abroad too. They want to venture out. They have friends from Japan. They have, some of the gamers, they play with people from Korea, for people from the Middle East. And having that multicultural competency, adaptability, I think it's a key for the new generation because, like I said, it brings them closer and closer together with other people on the other side of the world. But also it makes the generation that has that ability to be a lot more tolerant, a lot more inclusive, a lot more, adaptive and sympathetic and empathetic to our cultures. And I think that's a great way to teach them the language is in the household because they're a lot more comfortable. They're not very subconscious about like how their pronunciation is and how they respond to strangers. But when they are trained and they're practicing within family, they'll be a lot more comfortable with it. Now, so you picked up Spanish at home. Did you guys take Spanish in school?
I did. I took Spanish. I took it in high school and I took it in college. It is very different. Very different. Oh yeah, because it's not, so for us, our Spanish isn't very formal. At least what I learned at home wasn't very formal. So I was able to communicate with my parents. I can communicate, and I actually asked someone recently that just came from the Dominican Republic. I was like, how do I talk Spanish? Like, is it good? And they're like, no, like you talk really well. And for me, I don't feel like I'm excellent at it. So my brother speaks Spanish very well. But it's because he's just constantly in that mode of always needing to speak Spanish because he's around people that need to speak the language more. So he speaks a lot better than I do. But I think also too, not so much the language, but also understanding too that they are Hispanic, right? So they need to understand what it was for me or for my parents to live in this world in the United States as a Hispanic. So it's not so much that you have to be bilingual. I feel like that is an absolute must because you take the next step. It's more of like you need to connect with your culture as well, because when I go out there and I speak Spanish, the first thing people ask me are like, where are you from? Are you Dominican? And the way that people relate to you once you confirm that you're Dominican, like Dominican to Dominican, they're like, oh, thank goodness. There's some sense of relief. So I want them to learn that they're Hispanic, they're Dominican, they're Puerto Rican. There's going to be people in the United States that you're going to relate to on a different level. And I'm seeing that now that I'm, just progressing in my life, that it's a huge deal that they need to learn that. So, yeah.
So with your line of work, being in dentistry, do you feel comfortable translating to helping patients, or you're not at that level?
Yeah, definitely. I can translate. I can have a full-blown conversation. There's some words that might come out in English. So, I say fair warning, I'm not really good at this. And then they will be super confident. They're like, you're fine. You sound great. Like I can totally understand you. But I feel super comfortable having a conversation with patients and explaining treatment plans. Or there was actually an opportunity where someone was like, oh, hey, would you present something in Spanish? And I'm like, I'm not quite there yet. I don't think I can do all of that. But yeah, I'm comfortable with it.
No, you should try. You never know. And maybe, you need to practice it, but that's fascinating. Now, speaking in a casual setup, it's different than translating like the dental terminology and relating that message to somebody that doesn't speak English in order for them to make the right decision for them as far as their dental health. That's huge. If you can do that, I'm sure that you are discovering a lot of the talent or the skills. Sometimes we don't feel or we don't think that we do have that ability to do so, but you'll be very surprised the fact that you've been hearing that language since you were tiny. It becomes part of your blueprints, part of you, but could be societal pressure saying that, I'm not going to use that. I'm not good enough. I'm not going to practice that. It's going to diminish probably your ability. But if, like I said, if you're translating and you can hold a conversation for somebody that they need to know about their, dental condition and how they're going to pay for it, or how they're going to, design their treatment plan, that's huge. Honestly, I won't be able to translate any of that terminology from English to Arabic. And I can read it and write it and speak it, because I never had the ability to be able to flip back and forth in that professional capacity or settings. I can simplify the terminology, but I don't think I'll be able to really deliver that term in Arabic, and it's all meaning to the patient. So for you to be doing that, that's definitely a big plus for you, and that makes you even more valuable to the company that you're working with, because probably you can speak to dentists that they are bilingual, or maybe they're stronger in Spanish than they're in English. So I guess the next thing I want to ask you is, would you recommend coming to United States for somebody, a young 17, 18-year-old, somebody from the DR that is, thinking that the grass is greener on this side, and they want to come to United States and build a life?
Yeah, no, I would absolutely recommend it to anyone, but with the understanding that there's no shortcuts. You have to work hard, right? And depending on how you come in, whether it's you're set up in a way where family is going to help you or family's not going to help you, just have some type of direction, because having all the direction is kind of it's a little bit crazy to think about. It's not realistic. So just have some goals, be motivated. I think that's the biggest thing. Always want to do more. I'm a huge person on growth and, just making myself uncomfortable and to be comfortable. And once again, putting myself in that uncomfortable position. You always have to be uncomfortable to grow. There's just, you can't grow any other way. And when you have that mindset and you come here to the United States, you will be surprised at how much you can actually get done, and be serious about it. Understanding that it's not going to be easy, you'll definitely grow a lot.
Now, you did mention, do you visit the Dominican on a regular basis? Do you guys vacation there, or?
I don't. I've been to Dominican Republic 3 or 4 times, maybe. So at some point in time, I had a really bad experience in Dominican Republic. I did go back, but I was 15 when there was this whole traumatic situation that happened to me, and I went back before I had my girls. So it was probably like 20 years later.
Okay, and your parents go back?
My parents go back all the time.
All the time.
Yeah, my dad didn't go back for a very long time. They've visited in the last like 5 years. They've been there multiple times.
Yeah. Yeah. And do you, now seeing your parents coming as teenagers, do you recommend because what I heard is the new Dominican generation, some of them will come to the United States and they find it very difficult and very, very expensive. And they rather some of them, they go back after a year, I was told, or some of them, when they calculate the advantages and weigh the advantages and disadvantages, it's almost like it's not worth it for them to leave. Now, that said, your parents coming at age 17, 18, do you recommend for somebody from the DR maybe finish high school and then come over, or wait maybe until you get married and come over to have a lot more support? Or do you think it doesn't really matter if you are motivated, just pack it up and come over?
Yeah, I think it just depends on the person and their mindset, because it really just has to do with how much you want it. How much do you want it when you're here? Because it's not easy. When you're starting, even at the age of, if you're coming at the age of 18 and you come here and you don't have family who can kind of keep you afloat for some time to try to figure it out, it's going to be difficult. It's going to be one of those situations. And it depends also too, I think, where you end up. Because in Massachusetts, I feel it's a little bit harder because things are so expensive. The city as well, like I feel living in the city, it's really expensive. So there may be other states that they may be able to thrive a little bit more than being here. So they would have to figure that out.
You think thriving better or thriving faster? Like there are a lot more opportunities?
Both.
Okay.
I think both, because if you're coming here and you're trying to see fast results, it won't happen. But you can see results. It might just take you a couple of years. Some people come here with the mindset of, I want to start making money right away. It's hard. You can't just do that unless you're doing something completely illegal. Like it's just, you can't do it. It's going to be hard. But it could happen. I had a cousin who came, he came here and luckily he had family that he can stay with, but he's an electrician now. He has been in this country in like less than 5-6 years, and he's done a lot. But it's because he came here and he came here with an agenda. He came here motivated. He came here with the right intentions of like, when I get there, I'm going to get a job. I'm going to make sure that whoever is helping me, I'm able to pay them, for me to stay there. And then I'm going to get an education. And he went into a trade and he's doing amazing now. He talks great English. And that's another thing. You have to be open. You can't just come here closed-minded and think that, things are just going to pop in your life and be amazing. So he was open to the idea. He knew he was going to struggle, and he did a lot for the short period of time that he was here. So that's very inspirational. I think that that's more inspirational than sort of my story, because I had so long to figure it out. But for him, coming here and not knowing the language and not really knowing the lifestyle, and coming to Massachusetts, which is also like another big thing, he did amazing.
Yeah, so, there's so many successful stories. Maybe we should have him on the show. I would love to interview him. Seriously, if he's comfortable enough. But no, I agree with you. I think, and I mentioned it before in other episodes, that if you are planning to displace yourself by design, meaning that like your cousin, he didn't really probably had the suppressing circumstances. He just wanted a better life, and it sounds like he was very, very successful. But that was his mindset too, right? Mindset. He was more extroverted, very task oriented. Probably did his research. He planned for everything, and I agree with you. It works if you handle your journey in a certain way, and you can, within 5-6 years, that's an achievement. It's huge. And electricians, as you know, they're very, very successful, and they become, very lucrative business, because we can, as an electrician, I always call a trade school: plumber, electrician, landscaping, builders, general contractors. As long as the humans are still living on this earth, you cannot live without electricity. You cannot live without water. So that's a great field and career on his part, decision on his part to get into that career. That was very, very smart. And if you do it right, he'll thrive very, very well. But so your partner is from Puerto Rico, right? So do you see a difference in like the mindset or their setup, like his perception of reflection on his parents' journey? Is it very different than your parents' journey, or you guys have there's a lot of similarities as immigrants?
So it's sort of the same and sort of different. So he actually was, he only really primarily lived with his mom growing up. And so he really only had one family member until he had, his mom had married And they were able to do a lot more when they were married, but he comes from a very different situation. And I actually have learned a lot from him in regards to independence, in regards to, just being a strong woman. I think because that's something that he saw all along in his life. His mom's a very strong individual. She's, she's the head of the household for some people would see it as. And so the way that he was brought up and the way that I was brought up was completely different. And he actually says, you had it so easy growing up. You had both your parents there and, you had all of these things and you were always known as this person who didn't has money, but you had your life was set. You guys had a home. You guys had nice cars. You guys had all of this. And it's like, he didn't have a lot of that stuff he had to build on his own. So I actually learned a lot from his life and his culture.
No, it's all about perception, right? Sometimes you wish that you have, humble beginnings, and some people, they wish that they had everything from the beginning and they didn't have to go through the journey of or the process of building things up. But I guess my last question, since we're reaching to the end of our hour, believe it or not, is do you feel from living around immigrants that we have the tendency to overcompensate for us to be seen, to be acknowledged, meaning that we have to overachieve, we have to overaccomplish for the new society or the new world to really accept us and recognize us as citizens, as business owners? Or do you don't see that growing up? Like, for example, your parents, did they have to overperform in order for them to get to where they are right now?
Yes, absolutely. They had to. Because in paper, because a lot of the stuff is in paper, especially now when you're looking for a job, it's more of like, who are you on paper? If you cannot show who you are on paper, it's very difficult to go out in this world and be successful. And so that's the difficult thing about being an immigrant, because one, your name is a huge thing. A lot of people, as sad as it sounds, just by the way you look, by who you are, where you come from, I feel that you're automatically judged, right? And for me, I honestly, luckily, I am who I am, and I'm so grateful for who I am and where I came from. A lot of people saw things in me that I didn't even see in myself. So I'm glad that everything that I was able to do and accomplish, I'm where I am today. But for my parents, it was difficult, just seeing, oh, well, he didn't graduate high school, or, she works for this company. How, they wouldn't expect them to be homeowners, to own a home where they are now. You look at my parents' lifestyle now, they're at a point where they can enjoy their life because they worked so hard for so long. But when you look at them, they go to a store and they get judged. They go out shopping and they get judged, but that's a sad reality. So I think it's really impactful for a lot of people.
It is, and it's fascinating. As immigrants, we are okay to deal with that because we know it's worth it. You know what I'm saying? Just from a psychology point of view, if somebody is mistreating you, it's not worth it. I don't want to be in that relationship. I don't want to be in that culture. I don't want to be in that environment. I'm leaving. But it's amazing how the unlimited mindset of the immigrants that are willing to withstand that kind of stereotype, that kind of social judgment, because we know that we need to rise above it, and it's at the end, it's going to be worth it. At the end, this is exactly what I want. We want it so bad, a better life, that we are ready to take that on and just ignore it, because we know at the end you're going to be the winner. At the end you're going to be the one, that homeowner, a business owner, and and that to us, it's very much worth it. And like I said, as an immigrant, when you displace yourself, quitting is not an option. Failure is not an option. You got to keep going. You got to overshine for us to be noticed, for us to be acknowledged, for us to be, advocated for. And that's amazing how that psychology works very, very well, especially if you tap into it in the right way and use it for your own benefit. So so I guess you would encourage a young Dominican to come to the United States as long as they do it in the right way. And I think, like I said, with technologies and social media, I think it's a little bit easier for you guys to acclimate and acculturate and simulate into the new society, because there's so much information out there. When we came here in the 80s, there is none of that out there. We literally had to figure it out. Like you said, what is on paper is it's the most important thing, and people were not as connected as they are right now. So thank you so much for coming on, and thank you guys for watching and for listening. And as a reminder, these episodes are uploaded every single week on Wednesdays on the Apple Podcast and Spotify podcast, but they are also available for you to watch on the Greenwood Dental Partners YouTube channel. So please like, share, and hit the notification button in order for you guys not to miss any episode. And if you like this content, let us know in the comments below so we can continue telling our stories. I hope to see you next time. This is Slava, the Jordanian.